think he's going to overturn the election?
Well, I think that the fraud is far greater than I think most, even as educated, as intelligent you are, and a lot of your wonderful hosts, fellow colleagues. No courtroom has heard all of the evidence nor any testimony. Nothing. They haven't had the courage or.
Well, that is true, but at least one federal court, ruled that whatever was filed in the proceedings was so lame, so we don't need to have any evidentiary hearing, and the complaint was thrown out. It was deemed that the evidence that was in the complaint was so weak, so unpersuasive, it didn't make any sense to go forward.
I mean, I'm a plumber, but I know that there is no way in God's green earth, taking Michael Medved's line, that Joe Biden got 10-plus million more votes than Donald Trump.
Right.
And so many fewer counties and precincts. And only the cities he had to win in the swing states and Democratic-controlled precincts, and the eyewitness accounts of almost 1,000 people with made sworn affidavits.
You're right.
I think it's going to be overturned. I think that Trump will remain our president, and I think there's tens of millions of us that believe that.
I'm sure there are a lot of people who believe it, but it's not going to happen. I'll tell you a couple other things, Dan. The most devastating allegation was made by Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney, who said there were two software programs called Scorecard and was Home Run and Scorecard, I think it was. And what happened to that? Why isn't that part of Donald Trump's argument? Why isn't Donald Trump making the same arguments that Sidney Powell's making, that the voting machines were manipulated? He's not making that argument. Why not?
That's a great question. And why hasn't the president issued an executive order to analyze and capture every Dominion voting machine in the country to prove through open analysis, forensic analysis, that they're fraudulent and that really they. So like you said, I like the 1,000 cuts. Trump lost by 1,000 cuts, and whether it's people overvoting, illegals voting, dead people voting, we know the Democrat Party is guilty of voter fraud in virtually in every election in America. We know that.
No question about it.
And nothing's really been done about it. And we let this go, it'll never stop. We have to stop it now, this time.
And Dan,
we can't afford to have 4 years of a Joe Biden presidency.
I hear what you're saying. All I'm telling you is it's not going to happen. And the reason it's not going to happen is that every 4 years, the other side is going to make the same argument that there was a voter fraud, there were voter irregularities, because there's always voter irregularities, particularly in a close election. And that means every single election could be overturned in Congress, because if we do this, they'll do this 4 years from now. That's why Mitch McConnell and the others, Mitch McConnell anyway, is urging his Republican colleagues not to do this.
I think there's another reason why, and it's just alternate news. That his wife is tied to the CCP. Is that true? That her family is tied, her family's corporation. He married a Chinese lady. Tied to the CCP.
You talking about McConnell's wife?
Yeah, Mitch McConnell's wife. Chow was her last name.
Yeah, she was the former Secretary of Labor. I've never heard that.
Okay.
Well, I'll look into it, Dan. I've never heard it. All I'm telling you is, don't have a heart attack when after a few senators stand up there and try to overturn the election in January, and I suspect there'll be a handful, maybe there may be as many as 10. I think it'll be north of 0, but maybe as many as 10. All I'm telling you is, if that effort takes place and when it fails, don't slash your wrists. What we ought to do, as I've said before, is figure out what we did wrong, figure out what the other side did illegal, make sure it doesn't happen again, figure out what the other side did that was legal, and emulate it. In Orange County here in California, there were 4 seats that were held by Republicans for years. Democrats took them 2 years ago by using what's called ballot harvesting. Not illegal, dicey, but not illegal. What do Republicans do? They figured out what the Democrats did, and they used ballot harvesting, and guess what? All 4 seats have now been returned to Republican control. It seems to me that's the better thing. Figure out exactly what happened, exactly what went wrong, and make sure that we fight fire with fire. And don't forget, despite the failure of President Trump to retain his seat in office, assuming on January 6th things don't go well, he still picked up about a dozen seats in the House when the expectations were that 15 seats were going to be lost. And it was clear that the expectations were that Republicans were going to lose the Senate. And now it's down to a runoff, and all Republicans have to do is win one of these 2 seats. On January 5, they retain control of the Senate. And Joe Biden will be hemmed in. Don't forget, Donald Trump has appointed a bunch of judges that are going to interpret the Constitution the way the Founding Fathers intended. and the numbers in the House for Republicans have increased, and we've not lost control of the Senate. So Joe Biden is going to have a very difficult time trying to undo Donald Trump's legacy. So as long as we win on January 5, at least one of those seats, I think the Trump legacy is in good shape, and if President Trump wants to run again in 4 years from now, I believe there'll be a great deal of enthusiasm for him. He is far and away the front runner based upon the polls that have seen conducted recently. Overwhelmingly, Republicans want him to run again in 2024, assuming he doesn't stay in office now. I'm Larry Elder.